I'm feeling it. I am feeling it.
So, the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who scored only 4 Rouges all last season, Jack.
The Stampeders are over the hump and back on top. 2018 Grey Cup champions.
Yeah, man, I eat chalk for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Here's a 50 to the 40, down near the 20. He's gonna score! Touchdown! A chance to win! Will they get it? Yes, they will! Unbelievable! Holy goodness!
Whew! Muy caliente.
We are live with the 7th episode of the Red, White, and Rouge podcast. My name is John. You guys can find me on Twitter at JohnHewish_. And as always, I'm joined by Rob, also known as Rob McSports on Twitter. Guys, before we get into the week review from last week, one, we're going to have a little conversation about some stuff that's going on in the CFL for those of you who are interested. And two, if you're not listening to this podcast on iTunes or Google Play, and you prefer to listen to podcasts on iTunes or Google Play, go check it out.
What are you doing?
Well, yeah, honestly, what are
You're
you
messing
doing?
up.
You are. It just makes your life so much easier, and we want to make your life easier. That's why we try.
That's why we do this.
Literally, that is literally why we do this.
Yes.
So some weird stuff is going on in the CFL, and I know you wanted to talk about it. What was the first topic you wanted to bring up?
So I'm going to bring up 3 topics, and I just want your initial reaction, feel about it. The first one is the firing in Montreal, the GM firing. That happened apparently due to use of funds and trying to move around the salary cap, which to me sound like things that you want your GM to be doing. You want them to be looking for loopholes and being able to spend their money differently. So,
I don't know
what are
if
your
this
thoughts?
is totally legal. That's why. He literally was like the Alouettes, or he was like hiring these outside companies who were expensing the team for whatever, and then those companies would get that money for the non-services they provided and give it to the players. So I don't know. There was like an issue too about him not paying his rent for like a few months. So he got like evicted from somewhere too. I don't know. It's the whole situation's weird, and the weirdest thing to me is how do you get around the salary cap and still be the worst team in the league? Like, fuck. Honestly, that's my initial reaction.
First of all, I don't think they're the worst team in the league. I don't think they're the worst team.
They were last year.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is probably when this was, started, and they were still shit, and that's probably why, they were probably doing this with Johnny Manziel mainly, actually, John Manziel.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't consider it that way, that they were doing it to pay for some of their more marquee players, and that's a really good point. As well, I wonder if this affects the ownership situation that's happening there right now, which I believe the new Montreal owner is going to be buying the team within the next week or so. It's all but confirmed at this point. So a new GM, a new owner, we'll see. Maybe we'll see a big shakeup here, but it'll be interesting. Anyway, second thought is, how are the Lions this bad? They have Mike Riley. They have a good receiving core. I wouldn't say an amazing receiving core, considering Deron Carter hasn't been amazing thus far. And they spent a lot of money on their own line last summer. A ton. They got Suk Chung. They got Brett Boyko. They got a bunch of guys who were supposed to be able to protect Mike Riley, and it's completely falling apart. Who do you blame for the Lions' ineptitude?
I mean, just to connect our last point to this one, spending money does not doesn't necessarily make a situation better, right? Even if you are doing it
totally
within the salary cap. But I think the issue is I think you just have to blame the whole defense. Like, holy fuck. That is honestly, I was in pain watching them just try to, who is it? Natea J caught that a 2-yard pass.
Oh my God, the tackling.
And that is just that's a summary of BC's defense on the season. It's just fucking arm tackles and trying to hit a guy high. Honestly, I can hear my fucking our coach screaming at us for fucking
what's with these arm tackles?
And it's that's something you learn. That's the first thing you learn on how to tackle people. So I don't understand. It's weird to watch professional football players do that. It's weird. It's not even it's past the point where it's bad. It's this is just a real head scratcher, honestly, how they're this bad. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
But
I
yeah.
was in person there, right? And anyone who's been to a sporting event with me knows I'm a yeller. I
Mhm.
yell at the other fans, the coach, the players. I yell at sporting events. It's why I never plan to have children. But like at one point there was this one play where the Edmonton returner, his name is escaping me, reversed the entire field because of a missed tackle and got like a 30-yard gain, and I stood up and yelled, "That's a high school play, Coach Clay Brooks. That's a high school play." And I was so frustrated at the team. And there was this other one where Mike Riley got absolutely slammed from the blind side, and I literally stood up and yelled, "You're gonna kill him! What are you doing?" What a rough game to watch, especially in person. It was
you can't
pathetic.
just turn it off like I did. Honestly,
No.
I think after that
And there
long
was
Edmonton touchdown, I just turned it off. I couldn't.
Lucky you, especially considering Ricky Collins had decided that nothing was going to happen today.
Oh wait, yeah, no. I'll get to Ricky Collins actually on the rewind part. I really want to rip into him though. But let's talk about
Excellent.
topic numero tres.
And this is the fall of the Ottawa quarterback to be replaced with the great brick stone foundation piece, Jonathan Jennings. I know you're more excited than anyone about this, but let's hear.
Oh, I'm salivating to to play.
He's our lock of the week for both of us.
Yeah. It was funny. I think it was an injury that impacted Dominique Davis, because yesterday Campbell came out and said, like, he's our guy going forward. He's our quarterback. And then today, Jonathan Jennings is taking reps with the first team and is announced the starter. But I saw one of their beat writers tweeting about how Davis was kind of like limping or skipping across the field or something. So that could be it. I don't think that's fair to give him the hook after, a bad game against Winnipeg, which is the best defense in the
Montreal.
league. And you can't blame Dominique Davis for the fact that you let Vernon Adams run and throw all over your defense, and they were just
It's very
nowhere to
true.
be found. So that's not his fault. Could he be better?
What a game
Yeah,
for Vernon
but-
Davis too.
Yeah. He's future.
That was fun to watch. He is one of those guys. I think he's more future than Cody Fajardo. He's got a better pedigree. He's been successful in college. I believe he was one of those guys who was on the team who beat that ridiculous. It was a huge upset, and Oregon State beat something like Alabama or something in early in the season. I remember that on my Sports Illustrated magazine back in like 2009 or something. But anyway, we should probably get into the rewind. Lonus, play the music.
I told you, what did I tell you? Didn't I tell you? 'Cause I told you. Mm-hmm.
So week 5 was not the best from a DFS perspective, but it was good from a betting perspective. We hit the lock of the week there, and like I said I didn't even know the spread last week, and that was my take. Montreal wins, and that's about as far as my good takes went last week. That's it. Everybody played Andrew Harris, so I can't take any credit for him. That would be unfair. That was like a no-brainer.
I am going to give you a tiny bit of shit because there was someone here who was a big fan of Malik Irons this week, and that he might be the starter ahead of Coombs, and I was bullied out of my take
Cyberbullied at that.
cyberbullied over Skype about my Malik Irons take, and he ended up having a pretty good game. He produced. But I'm not going to blame you for that.
No,
that's that.
Literally,
I
no.
didn't think he'd be playing.
I think that game, if anything, proved why I was making fun of you for it, because if he was the backup, he would have got as many touches as Anthony Coombs did, which was 0.
I would be so pissed if I was Anthony Coombs right now. His entire career has been destroyed by injury after injury. And, this looked like the opportunity. And nope, we're going to put in Malik Irons, who I actually like that move from a coaching perspective. You want to get the young guy who you have control over for several years, who could probably produce now out there. And so that's what I would do. But if I was Anthony Coombs, I'd still be pretty pissed.
Agreed. All right, to talk about BC Edmonton, that was just a real Chinese fire drill.
Oh my God.
Edmonton put up 33, but Trevor Harris did not go over 300 yards passing. Ricky Collins Jr. had one catch. And now this is after last week. He had the audacity to have a chuckle on Twitter about how BC was 0-3 before they played Toronto.
I know.
And now you come back to face your old team in your old stadium, and you put up one catch for 14. That's like, honestly, that's something, again, 2020 hindsight. That's the whole point of this. I could have fucking telegraphed that. Like, I knew that was so predictable that he would, talk all that shit on Twitter and then show up and just do fuck all. Like, the worst.
Yeah, and ironically, Kenny Stafford wasn't amazing either.
Well, I mean,
so somehow both of them did not put up, and neither did Ellingson.
Daniels is back though. That's why.
Yeah, and DeVaris Daniels looked really good. He had that one catch, I believe, in the third quarter. Mm-hmm. The kind of diving one in the end zone. What a play! Everyone in the stands was. Oh, he's going to be really good. And everyone in the stands, they're all upset that the Lions are losing so much. They went, oh, okay. That's not it was actually perfect coverage by the DB. DeVaris Daniels just made a godly catch.
Mm-hmm. Not the best week for Lamar Durant. He only had one catch on 4 targets for 5 yards too. So his price went up this week. That'll be something we talk about later. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, last week was definitely just terrible for DFS. I was tilting pretty hard at the end of the week just because I don't know what the fuck DraftKings is doing, but Kadeem Carey did not get points for a blocked punt for a touchdown. Now, it wasn't a fumble. The kick had left the kicker's foot. Kadeem Carey just put his hand in the way, picked the ball up himself, and ran it into the end zone. And the response they gave on Twitter was my favorite part, saying, like, he's not going to be credited because it was a special teams touchdown. Meanwhile, Brandon Banks returns a kick 115 yards, gets the return yards points, and gets the return touchdown points. So, I don't know. Whoever's running DraftKings Twitter, they don't have the one guy who's doing CFL running the Twitter as well, clearly. So
that guy's very busy, John.
Yeah, he is.
Well, actually, no. I don't think he is, because otherwise he'd do a better job. But anyway. Also, the Verdon Adams Jr. game, just to add on to that I said earlier, that guy's a treat to watch. I was astounded. I was working out while I was watching it, and I kept having to pause and stop exercising, and I didn't get much of a workout because I was just like, wow, look at this guy go.
I thought you were going to go a different direction, say he inspired you to lift more than you'd ever lifted or something.
Nothing will inspire me to exercise more than I do.
Fair enough.
But anyway, should we go into the first game of the week?
Week 6. Week 6. Toronto is at Calgary. Calgary are 11.5 point favorites, and the total in this one is 52.5. So with Toronto just as awful as they are, McLeod Bethel-Thompson should be throwing for all 60 minutes of just about every game. Mm-hmm. Is he viable at 8,700?
He's viable if you want to kind of load up the rest of your lineup. I think that's risky, especially when he's throwing against probably the best passing defense in the league right now, or at least the most high event with the interceptions and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's risky, but you could definitely do it and it pay off big time.
I mean, yeah, we saw what happened with Darrell Walker last week. I don't think Calgary will make those mistakes this week. So I honestly, I can just firmly say now, I won't shit on anyone for like trying to be different with him, but I'm not going to have any exposure to him. But your boy Nick Arbuckle, neither will I. We going back there?
I'm not, because I think Nick Arbuckle, despite the fact that it's a nice story and everything, and I think he is a good quarterback, he's not super high event. I don't think he's going to have a 300-400 yard game. He hasn't yet. He's very.
Yes, he did. Last week he had over 300 yards.
Did he have over 300 yards?
Yeah, he threw for 368 yards but no touchdowns, and they still lost.
That's what it was. There was no touchdowns. Well, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he's an efficient passer, but I don't see huge upside, especially like a 9,300. I think that is risky for me anyway. Yeah, and his receiving core is so on or off.
Yeah.
That I think it's
He's my quarterback 3 this week. He's my third option at QB. So
I'd put him as my third option as well.
I'll just leave it there. Running backs. Kadeem Carey did not get screwed once, but he got screwed twice last week with only literally probably less than a handful of carries. But Toronto is allowing 153 yards per game on the ground so far. And that is far and away the worst mark in the league. We've seen what these big backs can do against this Toronto front seven, which is just useless, honestly. It's hard not to consider him again at 5,800 here. Again, you look at the narrative, the game script with Calgary probably leading most of the game, and God, how many? There's no way they give Terry Williams more carries than Kadeem Carey this week. That would be madness, and I would be so.
It would be madness, but I don't.
No, it can't.
That would be the wrong thing to do, and it would be madness, but it could happen. Don't let John fool you here. It could happen. So don't think, oh well, it won't happen. No, it very easily could.
Yeah, I would be very surprised.
Well, exactly, and I would be surprised too, but I wouldn't be incredibly surprised. This is the CFL, especially if this is a blowout. I don't actually see them giving Carey the ball as much.
Oh, no. If it's like a blowout in the fourth quarter, I'm not saying he gets carries, but I'm saying they're just kind of trying to run down the clock. They'll probably rotate him and Williams out at the end. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I feel like that end of the game running out the clock, which is normally a big push for guys like Andrew Harris, you have that big jump in the end of the third, beginning of the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we'll see that from Carey. And that's what worries me, personally.
Okay. Let's talk about...
That's a good point. You didn't consider that.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I have nothing to rebuttal with. Wideouts, though. I like Eric Rogers this week, honestly. He's done well against Toronto in the past. He's definitely a big target for Arbuckle as well. I think Reggie Begelton will still continue to get love from Arbuckle, but I just prefer the floor for Rogers this week. And even with, I think Jawan Breskison could return. But for me, it's really just between Rogers or Begelton. I'm not saying Begelton is a non-option, because he definitely is, but guys like Markey Thamples and co are definitely not options for me, and so are none of the Toronto receivers.
Nope. I think the Toronto receivers are a perfect example of buying high, especially with how am I forgetting his name? The big receiver, Darrell Walker. Oh my God, that's embarrassing. Especially with him having the week he did, I think you would be buying extraordinarily high on that, and he's going to be covered by that Calgary defensive back core the whole game, and that's not an easy thing to do. Also, what John said about Eric Rogers' floor is absolutely correct. I really like that take.
All right, defense, Calgary is probably the best option on the board this week if you're looking to... obviously Winnipeg is on paper the best option, but for $500, if you can save $500 on a defense, honestly, Calgary is just fine at home here against Toronto. Speaking of Winnipeg, Ottawa is traveling to Winnipeg to face the Blue Bombers, who are 10-point favorites, and this game has a total of 55.5. I actually can't think of a pair of quarterbacks that I hate more, so we can just skip right over this. It's actually kind of amazing now that I think about it.
Yeah, no, totally. Isn't it a damn fucking shame that Jonathan Jennings is going into this week as a starting quarterback and Strevler is going in as a backup?
It is, but Winnipeg are only 10-point
that's a travesty.
Favorites. That is disgusting. Foreshadowing for lock of the week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Running backs. Andrew Harris is 10,200. There is, quite frankly, nobody on the slate who has a floor as safe as him. You can pay $300 less for Greg Ellingson, and you probably end up regretting that.
Lower floor.
His floor is just so much lower that it's not worth it. Obviously he has that 40-point ceiling, but with DeVaris Daniels back in the mix, Andrew Harris is the guy to pay up for again this week. And again, it's the floor that comes with that price and the fact that there is some value available to fit him in, and honestly not many other options in that range that I'm as comfortable with. Moses Madu might not actually start this week. If he doesn't, John Crockett's only 3,500. Now, Winnipeg is far and away the best run defense in the CFL, but this guy's only 3,500. If he's starting, I don't know. He could, it really just takes one play to hit value if he really breaks something at 3,500. Yep. So I'd consider it if he starts, just because there's no other real, like a ton of value options, and it's just, again, an awful, awful spot. But, yeah.
At 3,500, I think it's worth the risk, personally. Mm-hmm. And it means you can spend higher on other guys. And I think the really key thing that we're learning, at least so far this season, is that the floor on receivers in the CFL over the last 3 or 4 years we've been doing this podcast, I don't think we've consistently seen floors for receivers be this low. Guys who are producing fantastic one week are complete trash the next. And guys like Brad Sinopoli have had, numerous games where they've had 2 or 3 catches. Mm-hmm. It's the receivers are really letting everyone down. I thought a guy in front of me at the game yesterday said, I thought this was a pass first league. And I'm going, it was. But guess what? All the receivers right now, almost none of them, apart from Banks, are producing.
Yep. So,
on a consistent basis.
Yeah, good segue into the wideout part of this game, which I honestly have no interest in anybody in this.
Nope.
So Winnipeg defense and special teams is obviously the top option on the board, both for price and likely what their score is going to be. But 5,500 is a lot to pay for a defense, so I wouldn't fault you for fading them this week.
Well, yeah, that's very expensive.
Edmonton at Montreal. Montreal are 5-point underdogs at home, and the total in this one is 54. I'm not going to pay almost $10,000 for Vernon Adams Jr., but Trevor Harris is my number one quarterback option this week if you can fit him in. We know how he does as a favorite, and even though I think this game, again, I don't know. Is Montreal going to win 3 in a row? Probably not, but a part of me thinks it's possible. Anyway, I still like.
It's possible. Edmonton's good though.
Yeah, they're good.
In terms of running backs, William Stanback, not awful last week, but probably didn't play up to value. And now CJ Gable is less expensive than him. So what do you think, John? Does that put a little bit of does it screw things up for you a bit?
I don't think no. My interest would still be in Gable. So the fact that he's cheaper honestly makes that kind of an easier decision. But at 8,500, if I'm picking a player, it's Eric Rogers. Slightly over CJ Gable, but no, that doesn't really mess with anything for me. With the wideout situation, though, things get a little bit messier with Tavares Daniels, I think, being the best point per dollar play in this Edmonton receiving core with how many passing yards Montreal still gives up, frankly. They're not getting much better on defense. They're just allowing less touchdowns, which I guess is a big improvement, but they're still giving up a lot of yardage. Ricky Collins Jr. could honestly bounce back here. He's still not as contested in the slot as Kenny Stafford is in the wideout depth chart as of now. As for the Montreal receivers, Quan Bray seems to be quite a favorite target of Vernon Adams Jr. He's getting pretty expensive, but I definitely think he could continue to produce. And Devere Posey had 7 targets last week, and he is only 5,500, so definitely interested in some Devere Posey this week as a value option.
Totally. I warn anyone against jumping on the Quan Bray bandwagon. Like, as John said, he absolutely could keep producing with Vernon Adams Jr., but this is a long shot, right? Like, he's had a really good start to the year. This isn't a guy with a long history of being good, and normally guys tend to regress a little bit to the mean after these kind of hot starts. And who knows, especially with how good Edmonton's D-line is, I don't know if Vernon Adams will have as much time in the pocket. You might see him running the ball a bit more, which of course takes away the ridiculous number of catches and long balls that Quan Bray is catching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you got me on that one, but I agree. I agree with it. Passing on both defenses here, though, resounding no for both of us, obviously, for both those defenses. Mm-hmm. BC at Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan are 3.5-point favorites, and the total in this one is 50.5. Cody Fajardo against his old team at home. I think we see him bounce back here. He's getting a much easier matchup. He's had that kind of week off to repair himself, frankly. So I really like him. He's my second quarterback option at 8,400. Tons of value there, and it really allows you to get comfortable with the flex players you pay up for. You gonna be playing Mike Riley?
I will not be playing Mike Riley. My New Year's resolution that is starting now is avoid BC unless you absolutely know they're at a significant advantage. And I see these teams as relatively even going into this week. And because of that, I don't really want to touch many pieces of BC. Mike Riley, what did he put up? 4 fantasy points last week? Something like that?
Yep.
It was in the single digits.
For sure.
And their running game is hit or miss. I just feel like this is a really delicate team that you probably don't want to invest heavily in right now. That being said, I don't hate William Powell at 8,000 against BC just because BC is generally pretty bad against the run. That being said, the issue with Powell is that he splits carries with Thigpen, and 2, the Lions have these individual games thus far this year where they're fucking amazing against the run. Like what they did against Don Jackson a few weeks ago, when no one could have seen that coming. So it's really hard to say, and I think that because they got beaten so handily last time, the Lions' defense is really going to come out hard. Whether or not that actually shows success is a question in itself, but it could kind of change things, especially in the running game, where it is a lot about effort and intensity.
I'm fine with playing Powell at 8,000. I don't really have any reservations against going BC's D, but I do have reservations for playing Powell with Fajardo. Obviously, a negative correlation there. Fajardo's, getting those 1-yard sneaks. That likely means Powell isn't going to score, frankly. So I wouldn't play them in the same lineup, but I definitely don't see any reason not to play William Powell at that price tag. Just on his own. Yeah,
I think there's positives and negatives. The thing is that William Powell could be amazing against the Lions D. But and probably if you're going off statistical probabilities, it's probably the right play.
Wideouts for me, it's between Kyron Moore and Naaman Roosevelt, and Shaq Evans is questionable. Emmanuel Arsenault is actually questionable too. He was taking first team reps today, and there's a good chance that we see him make his debut against BC. The Fajardo Arsenault connection against their old team. What do you think about that? He's only like 5,500, I think. Is he? Let me double check that. Yeah. 55.
I thought you were going to say he's only 55 years old, but no. Yeah, I don't know. I've said this before. Arsenault's big. The big thing that made Arsenault so great early in his career was his size mixed with his speed. There's a lot of guys who were as fast as Arsenault, but you normally just didn't see them at Arsenault's size. Now that he's older, he's kind of lost that size aspect of his game. I think he's still a capable possession receiver, but he's not a guy who I think is going to pick up a long touchdown and that's 50 yards and then have a few other catches to hit 100. The floor is quite low with Arsenault, and the ceiling I also think isn't super high.
I'm just trying to think in terms of how much this affects production for Roosevelt and Moore.
Well, Roosevelt is basically the same player as Arsenault, I think.
More or less at this point in their career, yeah.
Yeah. Kyron Moore is probably now the main target this week.
If Evans sits.
If Evans sits, yeah. But if the Saskatchewan wide receiving core is actually really, really simple to understand if you break it down into 2 tiers. There's Shaq Evans and Kyron Moore, and then there's Naaman Roosevelt and Arsenault, and then there's all the rest that are young guys and that kind of stuff. That second tier, I don't think is anywhere close to as good as that top tier. That top tier, I think, has actually a future of being very good. I think that second tier is actually on the decline. And that's, father time, all that stuff.
Okay, defense and special teams. Riders are obviously a viable option against BC. They're probably going to get plenty of sacks. Saskatchewan doing their thing. And that's it for the game-by-game breakdown, guys. Let's quickly hop into our final 3 segments of the week, starting with the John's Jewels versus Rob's McPicks. The McPicks picked up their first dub of the season last week, so we're up to 4-1 now. So, to celebrate Rob's first win, let's let him get started this week with the
McPicks.
Just quickly to add on that Saskatchewan defense, does anyone know if Charleston Hughes has retired or not? Do you know, John?
No.
No one knows.
No, as in, like, he
He's
hasn't.
Still on all the graphics for TSN. He hasn't? Okay. Because, like, I've been watching Saskatchewan games, and I barely notice him. Anyway, okay, that just might be he's old now, and he's not as good. Okay, so the McPicks. For my first player at QB, I have Trevor Harris, because I think they'll destroy them. I have Andrew Harris as my running back. And then I go kind of cheap on the receivers. I go DeVaris Daniels at 6,400, and then I play DeVere Posey at 5,500, because those 7 targets are intriguing. For my flexes, oh shoot, I wrote Crockett twice. I have Crockett if he starts. If he doesn't start, then I will switch things up a bit. And I have the Stamps defense. Give me 1 second as I see what my other... William Standback is my other flex.
All right. Time for the...
All
right, guys, for the Jewels this week, me and Rob actually have pretty relatively different lineups. Cody Fajardo is my quarterback at 8,400. Andrew Harris at 10,200. Going with the receiving core of Eric Rogers and DeVaris Daniels, pretty certain I'm going to lock that in. Kadeem Carey is my first flex, and I'm going to go with Naaman Roosevelt as my second flex, frankly, because I didn't have the room for Kyron Moore, and I didn't want to finish that. The Riders D is my defense, and I didn't want to downgrade myself to, like, the Red Blacks defense to fit Kyron Moore in. So that's what I'm sticking with for this week. Let's hop into the Price is Right. All right, sticking with the theme of Cody Fajardo. He's a value play for me this week, but honestly, I could name just riddle off a few more. I really like DeVaris Daniels' price tag, and I think DeVere Posey should be in that conversation as well for price. I mean, sorry. Go ahead. I'll let you Dutch rudder Posey a bit. Yeah.
For me, Posey is my Price is Right pick. That is pretty well locked in. I like Posey a lot this week. He'll be in all my lineups as a good value option. But if Crockett is starting next week ahead of Moses Madu, I will definitely be playing him as well at that $3,500 tag with the low running back floor that we mentioned earlier. I think he's a good value play.
That brings us to the
Lock of the week.
Huge lock for this week for me. I'm taking Bombers minus 10 here. For my gambling lock of the week, my pick's been doing pretty good, actually. I'm not going to, pipe myself up too hard here because there's plenty of season left, but this week I'll definitely be posting plays on Twitter for you guys that I like. Already in my head, I can see some plays for a few of the games here, but my favorite is the Bombers minus 10, and to follow that up, it's Andrew Harris is my lock of the week. As a player, again, just because I really think it's difficult. It would be difficult for us to do better in regards to a floor for any position player that's not a quarterback.
Yeah, that's very smart. Now, I have something a little different this week for my gambling lock of the week. I'm going to do a little parlay. No, not the Pirates code term for talk. The gambling expression. I'm actually going to do the total points for the Red Blacks Bombers game at I think there's really two ways to play this, but what I'm going to say on the pod is I'm going to say the total points. I'm going to keep it at an under 55 for the total on the Bombers Red Blacks game, but I would parlay that as well with the away team total points being under 22.5. So Ottawa's points being under 22.5. So you get a nice little double dip there. And the reason I think they'll be under 55 is because Jonathan Jennings might be the starting quarterback, and he can't throw.
He can't. He just can't.
He's not good.
He is not capable.
I could name 5 quarterbacks in the CFL that I would choose ahead of him that aren't your go-to starters.
Number 1, Darian Durant.
Number 2, Kerry Joseph. No. Number 3, Henry Burris.
Honestly, at this point, this isn't even a joke, but
he looks so damn good on the panel. Yeah. 3, Milt Stegall. But that's the thing. I think that the way that the total point stays under 55 is because Ottawa doesn't score much. So that's my lock of the week, and my player lock of the week is Trevor Harris. I just think he's got the most upside out of any quarterback, and they seem to be moving away from Gable in the run game as much, and that might change a bit, but I don't think it will. So that's why I have Trevor Harris.
Cool. That's a good way to wrap it up, guys. If you have questions for Week 6, reach out to Rob or myself on Twitter. I will be posting my plays on Twitter. I'll try to stay active on our Twitter as well. The RW and the Rouge Twitter. We tweet out some funny stuff over there. And again, go check us out on iTunes, Google Play. Leave us a review. That would be super greatly appreciated. We will talk to you guys next Tuesday. Best of luck this weekend. And most of all, have fun with it. Bye.
Yeah, let's do it. Peace.